Hey YouTubers, ham radio operators, my name is Johnny. Thanks for tuning into my channel Signal Trek. We've got a couple different things on the agenda for today. The first thing that we're going to talk about, if you were in the military, you may have, or you probably did, if you were enlisted for that matter, you probably carried this bag and all of its contents more times than you care to admit. Now what is this? This is the carrying bag for the camouflage netting support poles that the U.S. military uses. They still use these on certain occasions, but they've kind of moved to some more advanced camouflage netting, like types of netting that is integrated with the equipment, like it just pops out of the type of equipment. This really is the older style of radar scattering camouflage type of equipment, but it's still used, and you'll definitely find it in use in training. I've handled these poles more times than I care to admit, and that's exactly what we use these for. I was in the U.S. Army, and I was a mechanic, and we used these to basically disguise our motor pool, all of our vehicles, our command tent, things like that. And they're a really great way for ham radio operators to deploy antennas. They're very sturdy, and the way that they connect together just sort of provides an easy way for you to deploy multiple different types of antennas. Now there's two different types. These are aluminum, and there's also fiberglass, sort of depending on the situation that you were in when you were a soldier would dictate which type of pole you would take with you. If you were a smaller piece of equipment going on like a rapid deployment where weight was an issue, soldiers would typically take the fiberglass poles with them when weight was an issue. When weight wasn't an issue and you needed more strength, they went for the aluminum poles. Definitely a bigger danger with these, with electrical lines, as you can see the hazard here. These are getting harder and harder to find, and I wanted to make this video because I wanted to encourage other hams to go pick up a set of these if they could, because to be honest with you, I think these are going to disappear pretty quick because the military doesn't stock this particular type of pole anymore, at least not that I know of. I tried doing a little bit of research, and they don't stock this national stock number anymore. So from what I know, these are all being thrown out across the various branches of the military. And sometimes you'll find local Army surplus stores selling them. Sometimes you'll find folks on eBay. Ham fests, I've definitely seen these at ham fests. And your local radio club may have someone that has some of these. So they're definitely all around the country. Sometimes they can be a little hard to find. I was able to find these from a gentleman down south of me in Rama, Colorado, where I did my recent Parks on the Air activation with my linked dipole video, which I'll put a link to in this description. And I went to this guy's house, and oh my gosh, he had so much military equipment. I'm going to leave a link to his eBay store in the description below. So if you're interested in these from that particular supplier, he still has them, I believe. $165 for the entire set, and this is everything that came with it. I'm going to kind of show you the various elements of what came with these poles. Now all you really need is the pole. You don't need any of the other stuff that comes with the kits. This piece right here, this piece was the base piece. It went over the exposed aluminum piece just like that, and these little spikes on the bottom sort of provided for anti-slippage and anti-rotation, because you didn't want the pole to rotate as well as distributing the weight between all these little spokes right here. If you didn't have this right here, the pole would generally want to just sink straight into the earth, especially if you had soft ground. If you were on sand or something, you absolutely had to use these bases. Something else that came with the set was this little guy right here. This was the spreader. This was the piece that you tightened up this nut right here, just like that. Then you took the pole, again, the exposed aluminum piece right here, inserted it like that, sort of pushed up against the camo netting. You had to put these in just random locations and just make whatever you were concealing look very irregular from above, sort of like a rock. Stakes that came with the kit. these little aluminum stakes. Definitely wouldn't advise using these for a ham radio setup unless it's a very field expedient setup like field day or something, or parks on the air, where you're going to be deploying for a very short period. I have future plans to use this in the backyard, and I'm actually going to use the type of anchors that screw into the ground, the same type that you would use for a ham radio tower. And these are the guy rings. Again, they slip over that little joint right there, allows you to just put the next piece on, and allows you to rotate if needed. Very, very secure this way. You know, depending on what type of setup you have would determine how many different levels you need to guy the antenna. If you go up really high, you know, 50, 60 feet, you're going to have to guy this probably at 2 or 3 different levels. And his kit did come with multiple guy rings, so that was cool. It came with so many of those stakes. I'm never going to use these. I may actually take these over to the scrapyard. This is like 20 pounds of aluminum right here. Now, not really related, but on Amazon you can pick up a really cheap 500-foot roll of Dacron polyester rope, 3/16 inch. And this is the rope that I specifically use to guy poles like this. They hold quite a bit of weight. To be honest with you, I would not hesitate to put a hex beam at the top of these poles. Now, they're not as strong as some of the push-up type masts that you can find from Channel Master or from Roan. You can find generally like a 50-foot push-up mast from those companies for about $265. But, and big but, the shipping on that pole is going to cost you more than the pole itself. Seriously, go to DX Engineering and try to add a Roan 50-foot push-up mast to your cart. You'll see that shipping is $100 more than the actual pole. This is definitely a budget-friendly option to get a heavier antenna, in my opinion, up in the air. Caveat is you have to guy it. You can't just stick a very heavy antenna up in the air and guy it, say, at one level or no levels and not expect it to bend over and fold. If you do not guy this thing, these things will bend. They're aluminum and they're very strong and they have a lot of bend resistance, but they're not Hercules, right? I mean, you put enough force on them, they are going to bend over. Really cool in that they're modular, so you only really need to get as many pieces as you need. I commonly see guys putting these up around 30 feet, 30, 35, 40 feet in the air and just guying it at one level and having pretty good success with it. And I also see folks take these to the field commonly. However, when you load this bag up with all these poles and all this equipment, it can be quite heavy. A lot more cumbersome than, say, a self-contained fiberglass push-up pole. Apples to oranges, though. Again, this can support much more weight at the top, and if it's properly guyed, this can support one hell of an antenna setup. The other part of our conversation today is really about this antenna that I'm going to put on it. The current antenna that I have in my backyard right now is essentially sort of like an end-fed in a vertical configuration. It has 4 or 5 radials on it, and it has so much ground loss. Not to say that end-feds are bad, but I wanted to talk today a little bit about whether or not, and this is a discussion for the comments, I wanted to get a little bit of feedback from you guys on what you thought about this topic, on what you thought of whether or not you would recommend to have an antenna that performed really good on, say, 1 or 2 bands like this. This is my 20/40 meter fan dipole that I plan on putting up with these poles here shortly once it warms up a bit, once this polar vortex has disappeared. Or if you think an antenna that performs on multiple bands, sort of mediocre, which one do you think is better? And I'll give you my 2 cents. If you're a brand new ham radio operator, the answer is obvious. You've never experimented with ham radio before, and I want you to explore all of the bands. You don't know where your niche is going to fall in ham radio, right? So I would encourage you to explore all the bands. However, once you've been a ham for a while and you start realizing that the end-fed, while it serves a pretty good purpose, it gets you on the air on all the bands, it's not that good of a performer. You just kind of use it in a pinch when you have to and you want to get on multiple bands. You start to get the urge to have something that performs a little bit better. And while this performs pretty good on 2 bands, I'll also have the bonus, since it's 40 meters, it'll work on 15 meters, probably with a tuner. It'll probably have an SWR of around 3:1. Can probably get that with my internal tuner though on my base station radio. Again, you start to get the itch for an antenna that performs a little bit better. And if you've had that end-fed for a really long time and you've never tried anything better than it, this is me encouraging you to build something like a simple dipole and put it up in the air and compare it. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of the dipole. There's nothing fancy to this. It's just a simple Budwig insulator that allows you to connect your own lengths of wire. And I just have a full-size dipole for 40 meters and a full-size dipole for 20 meters on this. And we're going to try to put it up about 35, 40 feet. I've got 12 sections of these 4 feet pieces. And with the overlap takes away 3 inches. So with 12 sections, 36 inches, that's 3 feet. I would have 45 feet in total. That falls in the perfect zone because I'm not in an HOA, thank God, but I do have city code where I have to stay under 45 feet. So this is perfect. I may even actually go a little bit lower because I do plan on putting something else at the top of this pole, and that's going to be discussed in a future video, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, that's my 2 cents as far as whether or not a multi-band antenna is good or a monoband or maybe a dual band antenna. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and let's get this conversation started. Thank you so much for watching today. My name is Johnny. Again, my call sign is Whiskey 5 Kilo Victor. If you've never subscribed before, I would greatly appreciate the subscribe and a like for this video. Until next time, I'll say 7-3.